Meanwhile, let me make a quick introduction to the folks who have signed in. For those of you who are not familiar with Rohit Sachdev, Rohit is the Managing Director of Soho Hospitality out of Bangkok in Thailand, and is the proud owner of some of the most fabulous food and beverage establishments that one can come across in that part of the world. I'm sure Rohit will be sharing some interesting tidbits with all of you today, and I think we look forward to hearing more from you, Rohit.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
With that, I'll take your leave and over to Rohit.
Thank you very much. So it's a great pleasure to have you all on this call. Thank you very much for the introduction. So I come from a very unique perspective in that my organization, Soho Hospitality, we don't only own five food and beverage outlets that are expanding internationally, but we also have an interior design and F&B consulting organization that designs hotels, restaurants, bars, nightclubs, beach clubs, food halls for all the major brands. And besides that, we also have a digital marketing organization. So under one roof, we're almost like an incubator where we have operations staff, digital marketing staff, and then we have our F&B consultants and designers, and we're almost like an incubator where a lot of R&D takes place when we're looking at whether it's conceptualizing new projects for our clients, for ourselves, or doing feasibility studies. There's a lot of talent that I have in my organizations that I can leverage, and the COVID pandemic, being that everything that we do is pretty much hospitality related. The COVID pandemic had a huge impact on our business, and very similar to other people in the industry, in that we had to lay off employees. We had to look at preserving liquidity. We had to look at social distancing and some of those implications, but the caveat to that, and one of the positive things that came out, was really the learning that we got out of it. I think there was so much change that happened, and there was a lot that we were able to learn as an organization from the pandemic. And so today, I'm really excited to present to you my top 10 post-COVID trends. These are trends that are some are based on industry research that we've gathered. Some are based on our own experiences, and some are based on my thought leadership as a regular speaker and panelist on industry conferences across the globe. And so I hope you will find this enjoyable and interesting knowledge for you to use and leverage towards your organizations. So I'll just dive right in. The first trend I wanted to talk about was really about hotels restructuring their F&B approach. So hotel operators for the last 5 to 10 years have been restructuring their F&B organizations primarily due to the loss of revenues from evolving consumer behavior ideologies, especially amongst millennials and Gen Zs who favor dining at Main Street restaurants as opposed to hotels. Now that restructuring will have to be expedited due to the loss of captive business and leisure travelers, as most countries remain closed from incoming travelers, which is going to put a lot more pressure on the performance of F&B outlets at hotels. Now, some of the other problems that hotels are facing are related to bandwidth issues. So there was a huge amount of consolidation activity happening in the hospitality industry as operators were completing over the last 10 years to plant their flags across the globes. And that has put a lot of constraint on the F&B organizations of operators in order to adequately resource these their organizations to manage the number of restaurants that need to be conceptualized. So I spoke to a number of operators, people working for operators, and at times they're working with, over 100 restaurant concepts that need to be conceptualized across the globe. And this is happening at a time in which, customers are becoming more discerning. There is much more competition from main street restaurants. And the other problem is that hotel F&B cost structures are much higher than independent restaurants because they fall under the overarching envelope of their hotel HMAs and management structures. Lastly, the restaurant development process today requires a lot more attention to detail than it did before. Once we, conceptualize a restaurant, we need to look at, interior design, branding, uniforms, tabletop, food, beverage, mixology, music, service. And these are the 10 planets that I feel are super critical to create a really important, really successful concept. And so as these large hotel organizations have been becoming larger, when it comes to F&B, they need to really start thinking small and giving the attention to detail that these restaurants deserve. So some of the solutions that we've thought of in terms of how operators can tackle some of these challenges, one of the things we thought of that hotel operators could start looking at, one, increasing the size of their F&B organizations so that they can manage the bandwidth. But not only that, I also thought that it may be beneficial for them to create independent F&B entities within their own organizations that could act as incubators where they could perhaps acquire independent restaurant brands or create new brands which they could then cross-market across their portfolio of hotels. So this is some of the things that we think could be done in light of some of the challenges that they're facing in terms of the restructuring process. But we really feel that that restructuring process needs to be expedited in light of evolving consumer behavior ideology and what has happened in terms of COVID. The second trend that we're calling out is really using back of house spaces in hotels as cloud kitchens. So as hotels are now being constrained by lack of in-house captive customers, I believe there's an opportunity for them to leverage back of house cloud kitchens that could serve the hotel as well as its surrounding community. So hotels have a lot of underutilized non-yielding spaces that could be optimized for this purpose. They also have large back of house kitchens with walk-in refrigerators, and they usually have over-invested in some of these capabilities. So we feel that not only using these back of house spaces to serve the hotel outlets, but these back of house spaces could also be used to create and facilitate a cloud kitchen offering. Lastly, a lot of the larger hotels also have an abundance of talent in terms of the hotel executive chef and culinary teams that could easily manage such operations. So that is also something that could be used to their benefit. At Soho Hospitality, we're currently doing a pilot program in one of our hotels where we have started operating 2 cloud kitchens out of our hotel. And there's still the word is still out on the street whether this is something that's going to be financially feasible, because when you're operating out of a hotel, you don't really have the scalability of having multiple cloud kitchens. And I think scalability could really be an issue. And also there's a lot of challenges in terms of, because you're primarily operating without a front of house, there could be some issues that you face in terms of the high commissions. Some of the third-party operators are charging, somewhere between 30 to 35%. And then when you factor in some of the other cost structures in terms of food and beverage costs and energy costs and things like that, it may not yield a profit. So the word is still out on the street in terms of whether this could be something that it's feasible, but I certainly think in light of the COVID pandemic, it is an opportunity that hotels could look into. So one of the third thing I wanted to talk about was really about evolving consumer behavior ideologies, and primarily related to millennials and Gen Z. So millennials and Gen Zs make a very large component of F&B spending worldwide, and they currently account for 60% of the Asian population in 2020, and combining a population of about 1 billion people, 400 million people in China, 400 million people in India, 80 million people in Indonesia, compared to 120 million in the rest of Asia, with a combined disposable income of $6 trillion US. So the thing about millennials and Gen Zs were that pre-COVID, they were already very anxious about their current the current environment that they were in. They were anxious about climate change, their spending power, right-wing movements, Donald Trump, and they're also becoming very, very politically active. Now with the COVID pandemic, they're becoming even more anxious about their future. And this has created a huge change in the way they want to engage with their brands. There was a recent survey done where millennials were asked how they wanted to engage with their brands going forward in light of the COVID pandemic. And one of the things they said that they wanted to engage with brands that were more genuine, brands that were more human, brands that had a sense of purpose. They wanted to see more behind the scenes information about the brand. They wanted to know more about, the CEO of the brand and what he really believed in. They also wanted brands to focus on why they are in business as opposed to how and what they were doing. And they wanted to engage with brands that were going to guarantee their future. And one of the other things they also said is that they would rather see their brands represented by real people as opposed to celebrities. So what has this done? This has actually created a paradigm shift where consumers not only want to engage with brands that have experience. We've seen in the hospitality industry that, we've talked about experience and really beat that down to the ground in terms of, we need experience in our spas, experience in our F&B outlets, we need experience in our rooms, and it's a given that we need experience in hospitality. But the big brother of experience is authenticity. Consumers want an authentic experience wherever they go, and whether it's in lighting design or the food they're going to eat or the branding, it's really, really important as we conceptualize new F&B concepts for our consumers that it's going to be authentic. Authenticity takes center stage. The fourth one, I'm going to call it the death of fine dining. So pre-COVID, fine dining establishments were already facing very high cost structures. They were renting more expensive real estate assets. Their food and beverage costs are very high. They also have the labor costs are also very high in terms of the staffing they need to for them to staff their restaurants. And there was a research done by McKinsey looking at dining patterns, and this was primarily US-centric data. I wasn't able to get Asian-centric data, and it showed that post-COVID, there was a 50% decrease in revenues in fine dining establishments, and that decrease was going to continue over 12 months from now till 1 year from now. And the only segment that was showing a 5% decrease was in the QSR segment, and primarily in the area of pizza. And 12 months from now, the only food segment that was showing an increase was also in the in the QSR pizza segment, which was showing a 5% increase. At Soho Hospitality, we run 6 QSR pizza brands, and we also saw an increase in yield and market share in our pizza brand going forward. So I think there's going to be a dynamic shift from fine dining to smart social dining, casual dining, and quick service going forward. I don't really believe that fine dining is going to be over, but I think that there's going to be a lot more creativity that's going to have to come in to the fine dining space, and we're already starting to see it. I've noticed restaurants that were in the that have Michelin star and have been in Asia's 50 Best. They were not doing much social media advertising, but now they're starting to do that. And there's a great example of Rene Redzepi at Noma in Denmark. He was a fine dining establishment, and during COVID, he basically turned Noma into a burger joint, and he was selling burgers for $18.50 and ice cream. So there is a lot of changes coming to the fine dining industry. I don't necessarily think it's going to be gone, but I think the industry is going to take a very huge hit, and I think that consumers are going to be favoring more casual dining, smart dining, and quick service restaurants, primarily also because of the impact in terms of their overall spending. At-home experiences. So during the COVID pandemic, there was another research done which looked at how dining patterns had changed, and most of us were in lockdown, and many of the restaurants in a lot of the countries were shut. So people were forced to dine at home. And so the statistics on home cooked meals versus dining outside during pre-COVID was 67% home cooked meals as opposed to 33% dining outside. Now COVID, that is going to obviously decrease as people start to venture out. But we're still expecting, again, this is US-centric data, and we're still expecting home cooked meals to be at 55% and 5% dine out. Now, although that's a lot less than what was pre-COVID, there was a study done looking at the loss of revenues from the F&B industry in the US due to the number of people opting to dine at home. As you know, it's more cost effective. Some are enjoying cooking more, inviting their friends home as opposed to dining out. And the statistics showed that even post-COVID, there was a $50 billion loss to the restaurant industry because of dining habits of people choosing to dine at home as opposed to. So, what does that mean? I think there could be an opportunity where hotel restaurants, especially in cities where they remain closed, hotels could perhaps have their F&B outlets provide some type of home dining experience, perhaps send their chefs or their culinary teams to create curated dining experiences at home. This could be something that could be done during lockdown, but it could be something that also could be extended to post-lockdown. The sixth one is operations efficiency or die. So as an industry, the hospitality industry and the F&B industry, maybe some of you would disagree with me, but I've always felt that the hospitality industry really lacked in innovation. And one of the things that happened in terms of the lack of innovation was that the OTAs, disrupted the industry, and that came at a huge cost to the hospitality industry. But when you look at the F&B industry, the third-party delivery disrupted the industry in a big way, and that also has affected the F&B industry in a big way, where we have lost significant amount of revenues. And I think one of the challenges that we face in the F&B industry in particular is that we really have not been very operationally efficient. We got away for many years with build it and they will come mentality, where we were inundated with a lot of customers. The top line looked great and the bottom line looked great. And we really never opened up the kimono to look at all the other key metrics and benchmarks in terms of our operating structures. So whether it was, food and beverage costs, energy costs, staff utilization costs, I think that we've gotten away as an industry with not operating our restaurants and our F&B outlets efficiently. Now, post-COVID, that is going to really have to be expedited and come to the front end of what we're doing, primarily because of the loss of income from countries continuing to being closed, decrease in consumer spending. I think we're going to have to become a lot more operationally efficient. We're going to have to do more benchmarking against the industry. We're going to have to do benchmarking against other restaurants within our groups to make sure that we can be operationally efficient in everything we do, because if we don't become operationally efficient, I think we're going to see a lot of restaurant outlets not being able to survive this environment that we're in. So the seventh one is really my prediction that the future of dining is entertainment. As I mentioned before, with the trend towards people dining at home, which basically has resulted in a $50 billion loss in the US industry over the next 12 months, people are now becoming more and more comfortable with staying at home. So the notion of dining is really about staying at home, getting on your phone, opening up your third-party delivery app, and ordering from your favorite restaurant so that that food can become delivered at home. And that's become a huge thing within Asia. Grab Food in 2019 announced in Asia Pacific that their business had grew over 900% because of people opting to stay in, save money, and order food for their applications. So what does that do? I think that there's going to be a huge paradigm shift in terms of restaurants, where dining is going to have to become entertainment focused. So if you are to be able to lure customers to come into your restaurants, there's gonna have to be a dining component, an entertainment component related to what you're doing. Just having a restaurant with great food and great ambience and a buzzy environment is not going to work. So, expect more restaurants where you serve great food and it turns into a club. Expect the coming back of teppanyaki, where it's a great dining as entertainment establishment. And hotel operators and independent operators are going to have to think very hard about how they can bring entertainment value into their restaurants so they can get their customers to come and dine in their restaurants and instead of opting to stay at home. My eighth trend is that F&B will become a tech-driven business. So as I mentioned, we've inherently been a very manually run business, and there's a lot of challenges within the F&B business, because at a time in which data is now the new currency, we have a lot of problems within our industry where our systems don't speak to us, whether it's reservation management, table management, POS, the CRM or the loyalty, and then driving all that data back into the back-end systems where we can look at our operational efficiencies and metrics. There's been a lot of fragmentation in our industry where our technologies are not speaking to each other so that we can offer the type of personalized services that the customer needs. Now, the F&B business is still primarily a service-driven business. It is a human interaction business, but technology is going to become the enabler that allows us to offer more personalized service to people. And there's a lot of exciting tech that's coming into our industry, and it's a breath of fresh air in terms of there's a lot of AI and machine learning that use, there's a company that uses machine learning and artificial intelligence to basically use cameras that track how satisfied customers are when they're at your restaurants. They can also track the efficiency of your culinary team, of your customer service, and there's a lot of other tools that are coming into the environment. And I think over the next few years, the F&B business will eventually become a tech-driven business. I'm not so sure in terms of whether we will be eventually run by robots. I think there will be some element of our business that will be automated, but as a restaurateur myself, I do believe that the service element, which is a human element, will be here to stay. The ninth one, disruption in delivery is looming. So I really believe there's a disruption that is going to come in the third-party delivery because I don't believe that the business model works. So there's been massive amounts of consolidation in the third-party delivery space where companies have been acquiring each other. And I don't really understand the business model because as a restaurateur who utilizes, as a merchant who utilizes third-party delivery, I'm being charged 30 to 35% commissions. And then I have to factor in my food and beverage costs, my energy costs, my rental costs. And once you factor all of that, I don't really believe that there's a lot of yield coming out of the business. The second thing I'm a bit concerned about is that when the food is finally given to the third-party operator, we don't really have any control over the quality of food and how it arrives to our customers. So I believe that there are inherent challenges in terms of the business model that doesn't work, and also in terms of the experience to the customer. And so lastly, I just looked at, last week I looked at two third-party delivery providers in Thailand, and I was looking at their financial reports, and they both, announced one announced a $40 million loss, and another one announced a $60 million loss. So, at a time in which we're really needing to make money from home deliveries, I don't feel like the current business model offered by the third-party delivery providers is very merchant-friendly. And at the same time, the third-party delivery operators are not making any money. So I feel like a disruption in the delivery business is looming. I feel like there's a new business model that will come out that will be more merchant-friendly, charging lower commissions, becoming more operationally efficient, where the benefit will be to the third-party operator, to the merchant, as well as finally to the consumer. So there's been a lot of, my last one is really about the need for human interaction. And there's been a lot of talk amongst hotel operators about social distancing, about the new normal versus the old normal, and how things are going to be once we have a vaccine, once things comes to normal. And I think as an industry, we have reacted very well to ensuring that we protect the safety of our customers who come to dine at our establishments. I think that is first and foremost the most important thing. But I also think that some of the things that we're doing, I think we're over exaggerating a little bit. I think that we do need to make sure that hygiene standards are maintained and regulated. But finally, I think that humans still desire interaction, and no matter whether it's pre-COVID or post-COVID, none of that is going to change. I think the hotel buffet is also here to stay, primarily because in the larger hotels that need to offer huge breakfast covers, I don't think there's an opportunity to change that into offering an a la carte breakfast. And at the end of the day, I think that we will eventually side on what the consumers want. If there's demand, there will be supply. And so I believe that humans and consumers still want the buffet to be offered to them. And as long as that is what they want, then the buffet will be here to stay. So my prediction is, because we still will want human interaction and we love to go out and dine with our friends and sit on the table, and we don't really enjoy social distancing when we're out between friends and family, I really believe that once things come back to normal, the old normal will be the new normal. We'll have to have some of the hygiene standard being maintained. But other than that, I think everything will go back to normal because that's what the consumers want. So that's pretty much it. Those are the top 10 F&B trends post-COVID. Again, my name is Rohit Sachdev. I'm the CEO of Soho Hospitality. If you have any questions at all, if you'd like to reach me and have a chat regarding any of the things I've mentioned, or if you have any comments or questions, I'd be happy to address them via email. Thank you very much. You're most welcome. I'm trying to answer some of your questions. I mean, there was a question from Ayush saying that, do you think that bars will need to have an entertainment component to capture demand? I think bars have always needed to have an entertainment component. I think that bars, you know, you'll go to a restaurant to dine, but I think bars are about going out and having drinks. So I think that bars should always have some element, you know, of a music program, whether it's live or a DJ, and I think perhaps that will need to be expedited going forward. So I don't think that, I think that's always been prevalent for bars, but I think that there's definitely more creativity needed for both for the bar and the restaurant environment going forward. Any other questions? I'm trying to, oh, sorry, I missed so many questions. 1 second. Another question, if there is a 50% decrease in fine dining post-COVID, how will hotels cope up with the revenue which was earlier generated from the F&B department? Look, I didn't say that there was a 50% decrease in fine dining. I said that there was going to be a 50. Yes, I did say there was a 50% decrease in fine dining in the U.S. post-COVID. So fine dining establishments will need to take a hit. I think they're gonna have to adjust their business models. I think they might have to move from becoming fine dining establishments to more fun social dining establishments. I mean, Rene Redzepi, who ran Noma, the #1 fine dining restaurant in the world, moved to doing burgers and ice cream and turned his establishment into a quick service restaurant. So I think it's really about creativity, and it's consumer behavior preferences and understanding your consumers and making sure that you understand what they want, and you're going to create the product that is suitable to what their preferences are. I think that's the most important thing. I think it goes on a case-by-case basis. You need to look at your captive audience. You need to look at the demographic that you're catering to, and you need to evolve what you're doing to ensure that whatever you're evolving it towards is still going to be able to capture market share from the demographic that you're catering to. It's not an easy switch to just change from a fine dining to a smart social dining establishment. This is something that's going to be curated, need to be curated by working closely with your operators or working with consultants that can help you to navigate through the entire reconceptualizing or the re-strategizing phase of your project. Hold on, I'm just trying to. So I had a question about food space and how we can see menus shaping up in the post-COVID era. So I have a take on that, and I was discussing this internally with my team. So I think this is a huge opportunity, because people want more contactless. Like people are looking at, the hygiene standards of their menus, and they're also looking at, how, do people want contactless menus going forward? And one of the things I was thinking about was, if you a platform where you used contactless menus, I think it becomes great, because once you're using an iPad or a tech platform to give that menu to your customer, imagine how quickly you can change your menu. Imagine how quickly you could change your pricing. Imagine how quickly you could move menu items from one part of your menu to another to see if that would actually change the spending patterns or consumer behavior psychology on the way they choose the food. So when you have static menus on paper, there's a lot of inflexibility in terms of what you can do. But if you were to use a tech platform, think of how much data you could gather based on consumer preferences. Did you sell something more because it was on the top right-hand corner? Does it make more sense for you to move the appetizers from here to over there? So I think it offers you a lot more flexibility. So I think there is an opportunity to do some innovative, there is some opportunity from innovation in terms of menu. I'm trying to see if there's any more relevant questions that I can answer. So there was another question about artificial intelligence in the industry. So there's a lot of innovation going on right now in the industry. There's a lot of young startups, but they're very much at the nascent phase. They're very much in the R&D phase. But I do believe that, and there's a lot of tech coming into the business, primarily because we really never innovated as an industry. We've been poor in terms of innovation compared to other industries, but that catch up is going to happen, and it's going to happen very, very soon. I think there's going to be great ERP platforms that will allow for data connectivity and that are going to leverage the importance of data currency so that we can really know everything about how much has that customer spent the last time he was at our restaurant. What is his dining preference? What is his what is the drink that he likes to drink? And you can start tagging those preferences based on the diners, and then you can really start connecting that data to your CRM platform, and then having that throughput of that data around the entire ecosystem of the customer journey. That's going to happen, and it's already happening, and there's a lot of innovation coming. And I think that you're just going to need to do a lot of research to find some of these companies, but they'll be popping up very, very soon. And there's a lot of money being poured into some of these companies out of the US. What are some of the permanent changes that restaurant industry faces? So one of the permanent changes that I see is when you're designing a restaurant going forward, you're going to have to design for flexibility, because we don't know when COVID-19, COVID-20, COVID-21 is going to come back. I think COVID-19 is going to go away. I think that with the amount of with the underlying value of real estate asset in India, for example, we can't take a 100-seat restaurant and have 30 people sit in it. It just doesn't, the math just doesn't work. And that's in the end not what the consumer wants in terms of a dining experience. But the one thing we're gonna have to do, and this is for all you guys who have independent restaurant operators or hotel operators, the one thing you're gonna have to do is you're gonna have to make sure that when you dine, when you create your restaurant concepts, you work with your designers so that you're designing for flexibility. By that, I mean, when you're doing your layouts, you're gonna be using more loose furniture. You're not gonna have a lot of banquets and fixed furniture, because that's gonna become a real nightmare and eyesore if another pandemic hits in the future. Secondly, when it comes to materiality, we're going to have to, there's no more carpets. I mean, carpets were already over, but carpets are now completely finished. You're going to have to use materials in terms of your tabletops, in terms of your fabrics, in terms of your all the finishes in your restaurant. You're going to make sure that all of those have, they're going to be new hygiene standards coming out for FF&E, and those hygiene standards are going to be permanent. So I think that is pretty much here to stay. I'll just take one last question. And the question is from Vagish Kelkar. It said that, what is the best way to build trust among customers in case of cloud kitchens? Cloud kitchens are a difficult business, primarily because they're primarily driven through, cloud kitchens are primarily back of house kitchens. Many of them, because of the high operating structures in terms of the commissions they have to pay and then the food and beverage costs, it's difficult for them to even maintain a social media presence, because that costs money. You have to have additional ad spend. So that's what I meant. The word is still out on the street on whether cloud kitchens and hotels can work, because if you just have one kitchen, you're going to be spending a lot of ad revenue to create marketing awareness and have customers to, not only try your brand, but become a loyal customer, especially in a country like India, where there's so much competition from cloud kitchens. So I think, it's going to be very, very difficult to build trust, but I think it comes down to the quality of your offering. Your food has to be, if you're competing in any segment of your market, you have to make sure, I think people at the end of the week, people order because they want the best food for the best value for money. And so I believe that the best way to build trust is to make sure that your quality of food is, ranks the top amongst the comp set in which you're playing in, and also that you make sure that your price points in terms of your value proposition is going to be good. And lastly, you have to make sure that when you put the trust in your third-party operator to deliver that food, is that the quality of that food is going to be the same quality that left your cloud kitchen when it did and arrived at the customer's home, because customers are very unforgiving. I've seen it with our pizza business. We have third-party operators dropping our pizza boxes, and at the end of the day, we're the ones who lose that customer, not the third-party operator. So it's a very delicate thing, but it's about really trying to control the quality of your offering, from price to experience to the quality of the food when it gets to the customer. Anyways, thank you very much. I'm sorry, but we're running out of time. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to share and leverage my experiences and my capabilities. If you have any requirements in terms of interior design, digital marketing, feasibility studies, F&B consulting, please reach out to us. We'd be happy to take some of your questions or some of your challenges that you face and see if we could help you from our perspective. Thank you very much. Take care.